Good morning, everyone. It is early here in the Pacific West and Northwest as Blaine Bartlett, my mentor, learn.blainebartlett/LMM, my mindset mastermind. How are you, Blaine?
Hey, I'm doing really well this morning, buddy. How about yourself?
Amazing, because I am so excited to have our friend here, Nadav. Nadav Goshen. He is the CEO of MakerBot, and I know I'm going to take this into a direction he didn't anticipate, but I have to ask. So, 3D printing is so fascinating to me, Nadav, because I am a believer of manifestation, and I am a believer of taking digital ideas, data, and materializing it. And I think the closest human-made, man-made construct is 3D printing of materializing an idea. And I think there has to be some relativity to what we're doing with 3D printing. And as you have, in the last 5 years, really evolved and innovated it into the home, to me, there has to be some equation of, okay, this is the seed that is going to prove someday that we can manifest anything that we want. So I'd like to take this into the manifestation phase. I'll let Blaine take it where he wants to go, but I couldn't help. I've been waiting all night. I was like, okay, explain to me how, this actually works and where your idea came from, as CEO to, really create this ability to materialize things in our home.
Yeah, by the way, thanks for having me. I think I'm lucky to be working in a place where I think you take ideas and make them real, as you said. And this is where we, our kind of vision is there is innovation in everyone. And what we try to do is to kind of make it real. And 3D printing is really, it's really, as you said, you take an idea and you make it a product, something that really you can hold in your hand. And I think the fun thing about that is that there are no limitations, because in the past there were traditional manufacturing techniques where you have I need to think in a certain way to make that part real. Now you are kind of open and freed of all these kind of limitations, and this is where I think where we bring value as an industry and to very old, I would say ancient technology. Manufacturing and subtractive manufacturing is back in the days of making clay pots, right? You do something, and there are limitations to what you do with additive. And how do you think about things like that? You can just take complex parts and make them reality, and that translates into value. And that is the value. The value, for example, you can have lower weights, you can have more efficient supply chain. You don't need warehousing. You can print what you need. You don't need to store them. There are so many things you can do. And I think, as you said, if we can make this, we can make other ideas, like you said, reality. And I think this is where I think as human nature, we want to challenge the limitations we have. The ideas are unlimited. When you make them real, you have limitations, and just do them in a different way. Then you kind of break these kind of barriers. So this is what we do.
It's interesting to me, and David, you mentioned this just in terms of thinking and just thinking into reality. We live in a objectively, in our experience, in a 3D world, three-dimensional world, but we're forced to actually think in many cases when we're looking at producing results or manifesting results in a 2D construct, a two-dimensional construct, space and time. That's just it'll take time to structure this thing in length, depth, and width. But 3D, I was working, one of my clients is IDEO, and I've been working with them for about 12, 14 years, something like that. And I was in their offices a couple of years back, and they've got 3D printers, and this is IDEO, the design firm. And there was such an intricately fabricated product that they had showcased. You could not manufacture this in a 2D platform it was it would have been a subtractive manufacturing process in order to put it back together. This was bespoke. It was whole. It was 3D. You'd look inside this thing, and it's kind of like, how in the hell did somebody actually It was thought into reality. It was thought. So this notion of 3D printing, it allows us to free up our creative processes, I think, in a way that we haven't been able to as a species before. Artists will think in 3D, but the lay person, actually thinks in a 2D platform when they start looking at how they manifest life. So all of that to be said, how are you actually leveraging that value proposition because Martech is you are the largest 3D printing company in the world right now, if I understand correctly. So how are you actually bringing that to market in a way that consumers, not just manufacturing firms, but consumers can actually leverage the advantage that holds?
So I think, I'm not sure we're the largest, but I think we have a significant footprint. But I would say that the idea that we bring is that we serve, as you said, like product designers, and product designers by definition are designing in 2D ways to mimic 3D, like any CAD software. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they start with a pencil, and then they draw it, and then they take their ideas into digital format in a CAD or a software, and then they want to see what it really looks like and feels like, and then they produce it and prototype it. And I think this process is very, very lengthy. It's easy to draw. It's more complex, but very easy to design it in CAD. But then when you kind of take that into the next level, get the part and fill it, then it becomes slow. And what that actually, and expensive. And what that actually does for the overall process, it slows it down. And we know that iteration is how you make perfection. You can't think everything out of your head and everything comes up right. No, you have to make mistakes. You have to learn from your mistakes. But when you kind of translate it into the physical world, there are limitations. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to bring to these designers a tool which is as easy, not very expensive, as a pencil. And I said, when you go to these designers and engineers, they have to have what we call the pencil, a CAD software, and method, which is our product, to get the overall, I would say, process of driving innovation. And I think this is the proposition that we are kind of bringing to the market, and I think it will change the way products are made. Because, and I think, and on top of that is what you said, the thinking will change, because the additive way of thinking, the parts that work together, that can be only produced in an additive way, are not, I would say, intuitive to someone that hasn't had experience in 3D printing. So you have to get this ball rolling and to get people more and more. So I think when we do that in a large scale, it will translate into better product, more efficient processes, and again, innovation. So that's that's what we're trying to do.
Nadav, it's so reminiscent of the early 90s for me when I got involved in the internet, and I always tell the story about how my mom told me the internet was a fad and it would never last. And one of the stories I want to share with you, because it's so pertinent to being in the pre-chasm state of what will be a daily or like you said, there'll be a 3D printer in every home. In fact, smart homes will come with printing aspects probably built into the homes as we're looking at it.
The homes will be 3D printed.
Exactly. I was about to say that.
The home will be 3D printed, correct. Well, and they're already starting. I know I saw and read an article on that. But I was blessed. I was 25 years old. I got to present Westlaw, which was legal research online in 1993, to the Supreme Court of the United States. So I recall Justice Scalia himself. So this is the leader of our country in law telling me that not only won't legal research be capable on the internet, but all research needed to be done in books. Which, why is that so important? Because this mindset change of an open mind to a closed mind, that we have ignorant, open-minded, humble people and ignorant, closed-minded, arrogant people from the facility of being an expert. And just because you're a Supreme Court justice, you have a high level of expertise of the law, but you also don't know everything. And I just laugh to think that here's a leader of our country telling me that we will never do research on the internet, when in actuality, the internet, the most positive, powerful thing of the internet is its researchability. And he couldn't fathom, his reality could not fathom my imagination, or vice versa. Where are we going? And I would tell people, when I was CEO of Samsung's first phone, you'll be able to talk to China in full duplex color for free. And people would, when I was on Good Morning America, they're like, you're insane. Like, literally, that's for free. You're going to be able to do that someday. That's like Jetson. Like, so where are we going? I know you invest in a lot of, as an angel investor as well, a lot of fast growing companies. You see things that Blaine and I, through hopefully our ignorant humility, not our ignorant arrogance, we could never see. Where do you see this in 20 or 30 years?
So by the way, I have to kind of echo what you said. I think the idea that we are feared of new is not, it's something that, like, and specifically if you're an expert, then, you lose your credibility. And with the internet researchability comes I would say the uncertainty of authority, right? Or, and that's something that, like, that people fear. And I think in 3D printing, the equivalent will be the IP, because the IP writes below everything. So, like, if I want to kind of continue with the analogy is like, we are working in a preset of, I would say, rules and regulations, which are really built based on the past ways of making things, right? And it's still unclear, or it's still debatable, the IP situation when you take a part of someone else's design and you mimic it in 3D. So I think there are, so I think that is the underlying, I would say, foundation of innovation here, because you can now make in, I would say, less costly matters, and something that, like, you can use for yourself, or you can, do, and then the freedom that it brings is, I would say, valuable for anyone. And I think that's the underlying forces. And then on top of that, there are, like, all of these kind of layers of advantages that we are, bound to. We are bound to supply chain constraints. And we saw what happened last year, when, like, what we thought never would have happened, right? We were not planned to have COVID or crisis. So we were not planned not to have constant supply of PPEs, right? So, and so that nobody thought about that. Yeah, I'll keep an extra stock. I'll keep another month. But if that doesn't last for another month, it's like 2 years and a year and a half. So we were brought in to kind of keep that, intact, and produce on-site in hospitals PPEs and other equipment. So that's changed everything. And the second thing is, like, do you need now to store spare part for something, for a car or a plane, and that was produced 50 years ago? Why? And how long, and how much it costs you and the environment to maintain such a, legacy, that you might or might not use, right? So that you don't need to, you can print it. So, and then goes to the actual part itself. We were thinking subtractive, and aviation and aerospace are now using additive manufacturing to produce parts that were never thought be able to produce. And then what it brings with I would say, organic support structures, which are more like a lattice and not more like a, like beams and that we are used to think like as engineers. And that changes completely the way the weight to strength ratio. And now you can get something more efficient in the sky, and you save weight, save fuel. So all of that is like everything. So ask me what? I don't know what to choose. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm trying to say to select. I said, no, all of them are great babies of this technology.
Wow, this has been incredible. We'll have to have you back because there's so much to talk about. I sitting here thinking that in essence, Blaine and you and I, we're 3D printers, right? We get these downloads, and then we create them. We find the materials, we put them all together, and we create what we think of. And if you take time and space out of the equation, it gets really interesting of how quickly, in the essence of infinity, we do create. So it's super interesting. It's definitely the future. Check out MakerBot.com. I can't wait for the day when we're not the only 3D printers in our homes, that we actually have another facility to create those door stops and little parts to our water machines that we wait 3 weeks to get. So it'll be incredible. Thank you so much, Nadav.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Wow.
That's fascinating. The whole 3D market, printing market, just is crazy. And the materials that can be used to do this. Yeah.
I think you and I need to discuss that in depth, the manifestation process of us being 3D printers and the capacity of 3D printing in essence. I was looking around the beach house prison I'm in the back room with the bunk beds, and I'm thinking, how many things could I replace or fix or do whatever with a 3D printer so quickly, efficiently, and sustainable, right? It's just, I didn't think about the sustainability issues of how many pieces and parts we must store for the last 50 years.
And the delivery, I'm continuously breaking down boxes from Amazon deliveries. And if I don't have delivery.
Recycling, eventually 3D printers will have their own sustainable self-recycling. So you put old part in, right? It takes the same material and reproduces it, so the threads are fixed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Think about this: how many screws are thrown away because the threads are stripped. But if you put it into a 3D printer and it recreated the screw with the correct threads again, it's endless. Anyway, we got another exciting guest here.
Hi guys.
Andrea.
Good morning. Very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. CEO of Salesjet, a serial entrepreneur, a public speaker, a successful mentor. He's sitting in the same spaces with us and having a great time. And really wanted to talk about your own personal website. The personal brand today, Andrea, is so important in every aspect. I love, you can have doctors of all types. You can have, these. We had a geek on yesterday. We'll call him, but an extraordinary personality. You can have old basketball coaches that run mortgage companies, and they end up being bigger brands than people that we see on the big screen. And I've been blessed to represent big names of sports and entertainment my entire career. But I'll walk the boardwalk here on the beach, and somebody stops me and wants my picture, and it blows my mind. I look at your website, how are you building your own brand, not just, in your space as an entrepreneur, but as a speaker, as a mentor, all the things that Blaine and I do as well.
Thank you for the question. Well, I started with the idea that I wanted to build my brand and do all these content production and talk to the people and believe in yourself, etc. But then I found out that that's not what I am extremely passionate about. So I built a website for myself and created a little bit of material in that sense because I have to. But what I really enjoy is empowering my CEOs, the companies that I participate and so on. I find a lot of enjoyment in doing something like that because I feel that that's not adding to the noise. Like if you turn on social media and so on, you can see a lot of believe in yourself. I'm an entrepreneur. All these things that have very little to do with the job of being an entrepreneur, very little, and give this stereotype of how an entrepreneur is, and gives a perception of life that is not what it is. At least in my personal experience, and I built a few companies, and I like to not be so visible. I like to make my companies more visible, and so the purpose of my purpose, what drives me, is the fact that I ain't gonna be an Elon Musk. I ain't gonna be like that level of innovation. It's something that only certain minds have. But I can facilitate potential innovation in businesses. So when I find a business that I really like and I find a mind that is a brilliant mind, I can accelerate their success and their expansion. So really my content will evolve more and more into empowering my CEOs and being more visible and giving out their message more. And that I really enjoy. That I think is not adding to the noise, which is something that there is too much of.
It's an interesting, there's a humility in that positioning that I think is fascinating for somebody in your position, because the egos that you deal with have got to be fairly good size in order for these folks to be successful. I mean, successful people have successful egos. So, yeah.
But sometimes you find individuals that don't know. Like they have something there that is really diamond. Maybe it's a little, has some dust on it, and it needs a blueprint to have all the other parts of being an entrepreneur that he doesn't have. He maybe have a great product, doesn't know how to sell it or present it or bring it to market, doesn't have the connections to do so. So yeah, for sure, there are a couple of my CEOs that have a big personality. But obviously, when you resonate with someone, you find someone usually that have some characteristics in common. I don't know that I would do very well with someone that like needs to go 25 times on Instagram saying, believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, look at my car. If you don't believe in yourself, look at my car. If you don't believe it, I don't know if that would be the type of person that I would want to take in my program and accelerate. The reason is that I think that entrepreneurs have a social responsibility in furthering society, in making society better. And to me, entrepreneurs are artists. I was an artist before being an entrepreneur, and I mean, I still am. And artists are entrepreneur are artists because they create something from nothing, and they need to keep creating it every day. Now, you can choose to add something to society, so your activity, your energy creates something that is a product that can be exchanged and produces a betterment, or you can make money doing a bunch of other things, but they don't further society. So I choose my entrepreneurs in that direction. I define an entrepreneur in someone that is doing something that betters society, and that's what I like.
Andrea, coming from the sports entertainment space, there was always two types of sports and entertainment people. There was the recognizable ones, and then there were the impactful ones. And eventually the most impactful ones, like a Muhammad Ali, or Jackie Robinson, or a Roberto Clemente, or a Warren Moon, they also become very recognizable as well, because of the way media has worked itself around that. One of the interesting things I'm working on is entrepreneurship. I believe entrepreneurs are going to save the world. I think we have far surpassed, if you understand compound interest, we've far surpassed through what damage we've caused from the resources we have. So we're going to have to figure out how to convert, plastics into food, or, spray the air to fill up our atmosphere again. And these are all not only possibilities, but probabilities in my mind, especially after talking to the 3D printer guy. I think, the entrepreneur can figure out how to fix what we screwed up instead of stop. Human nature never changes. You're not going to stop the consumption to a degree that's going to save what we need to be saved. It has to be fixed. To that point, our biggest and most powerful companies that have the resources need the superpowers of the entrepreneurs, not the ones standing in front of cars they don't own and houses they don't own, telling people what they can own, even though they don't own it. But I'm talking about the true entrepreneurs need to be entrepreneurs, because I think we've romanticized the cars we don't own and the houses we don't own. And we have a lot of unbelievably great minds that are taking on challenges that they're not prepared for, like being able to risk everything that they have and spending their time trying to create a company, not create a solution for our atmosphere. So I'm, promoting entrepreneurship, saying, hey, if you have this innovative spirit, if you are an artist like my friend Andrea, and you need help, we need the leaders in the multi-billion-dollar companies who will give you all the creativity, the business units, but also not allow you or need you to worry about overhead and employees and healthcare and HR issues. And we need you innovating. And so, I'm really encouraging a lot of people to be entrepreneurs. You deal with a lot of executives. This is a big talent problem that we have, that entrepreneurs are leaving these companies and they can't even recruit new ones to come in. How important is entrepreneurship in what you teach?
You touch one of probably the most important points that entrepreneur can create a passion and aspiration towards. Yes, I believe that your point is crucial. I see another element that should be considered within being an entrepreneur, which is I have noticed in the past couple of years in particular. I come from Italy, so my first entrepreneurial experiences were in Italy in the field of marketing. So I did marketing for Sephora, Lacoste, and other things like that. And then in 2013, I moved in the United States and I entered into a completely different market, etc. So I have observed a going down in terms of ability to enter into action and control the emotions. So it seems to me that people are becoming weaker in that sense, controlling emotion, controlling their state, persisting in a certain direction. And I do believe that part of it is if the goal becomes only how much more money I can make, that actually is not conducive of innovation, of true innovation, because there are ways you can open a drop shipping site, you don't produce anything, you just move the money and make money, or all the cryptopreneurs that exist that are not producing a product, are just moving money, just creating inflation, as a matter of fact. And so I think that the concept of, okay, how am I going to best use my abilities, my competences to forward society is one of the elements that are crucial. So there is that. I have a couple of relationships with large corporations, and we're trying to think, okay, like if we do something together, what could create an impact for real? Like if we have a little bit of resources and a little bit of opportunities, how can that actually translate into bringing those products into, or those solutions to become successful? Because we also have a problem of adoption. So having some innovation that doesn't get adopted, it equals not to innovate. So it's an interesting, and it's probably one of the biggest situations to solve, the aspect to solve right now, is the one that you guys have just mentioned, is how are we going to really innovate? How are we going to take minds and resources to produce real innovations that forward society? Environmentally is one, emotion is another. Having a job that keeps being relevant is another one. We haven't talked about AI, but I am seeing it in some of the activities that I do that is really, it's really coming in marketing and technology. That's really coming. So it's going to be an interesting few years, and I don't think it's going to be much in the future. I think it's pretty much now.
Pretty much now, yeah, I agree. Yeah, business is a spiritual discipline in the sense that, to your point, being an entrepreneur, I will grow myself if I'm actually paying attention to the right things. And if I'm not paying attention to the right things, I will not be growing myself. And my company is not becoming a reflection of who I am. My organization is a shadow of me.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's an emanation of you and the team that you build and how you work with the team. Wow, what a topic. Yes.
Yeah. We once again, the problem with the show getting so big, Blaine, is that we get these extraordinary guests.
Oh, I know.
And, when we started 15 minutes, we were like, how do we fill 15 minutes with one person? Now we need an hour with everybody. Andrea, incredible insights. I have taken away a moving money theme that I want to really explore and research myself. And I love the term cryptopreneur. I haven't heard that as well. These are great things for us to think about and contemplate. Thank you so much for assisting Blaine and I in our mission to empower others to be happy, to be impactful by empowering them. And I could tell you are on the same journey. We would definitely have you back. Come check out AndreaDiAgostini.com to learn more about him and the companies and his mission. executives, if you want to know and reach your potential, Andrea is a great person to reach out to. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Bye.
Appreciate
You
it.
too.
Thanks.
All right.
Wow.
I love what it, I know. I love the show so far. And of course, we got a big cleanup hitter here.
Yes.
Very emotional aspect here. Ivan Wilzig, he is himself Sir Ivan, aka the Peaceman, and a top 10 Billboard charting recording artist. Sir Ivan, philanthropist is what I love about him, and dedicating his career to help people, especially with PTSD. But interesting enough, he comes from a lineage of consistent, persistent pursuit. And I say that because, I'm always amazed on the genetic and energetic inheritance that we get, especially when our parents have struggled. And, I come from two grandfathers that came over on a boat from Russia in 1913, sold tires out of a truck 6 days a week. My mom was a single mom who raised 6 kids. But Ivan, boy, your father was a Holocaust survivor and immersed and never let that stop him, or maybe utilized it. And so I want to start with the energetic and genetic inheritance that you've received and what significance it has in your career as a successful musician and philanthropist.
Well, thank you very much. The genetic inheritance is something real. I feel in my case, and my siblings also. They when you have a father who went through so much evil and saw so much death and destruction, personally and the rest of the Jewish people, in Auschwitz, in Mauthausen, two different death marches. It's the worst of the worst. So when you're deprived of education, you lose your family, business, etc., and come to America and have to start all over again. It's quite a task, let alone to achieve what he achieved in his lifetime. So you look up at. I didn't need to look anywhere else for a hero or someone else to admire, a world leader. I had it all in my father. He had the brains, he had the brawn, he had the charm, he had the heart. All things that my brother and sister and I hope to have had the same. And I think the psychologists say, generally speaking, the children of Holocaust survivors are overachievers. Well, we all are overachievers for sure. For one, and also I got to
interrupt you. I've learned one thing. Obviously coming from my heritage, all the children of Holocaust survivors that I know are not complainers. I always say, could you imagine, kids today, complaining to your father, my shoes are getting old. I need a new pair of shoes. I'll tell you about shoes.
Well, yeah. No, relatively speaking, you're talking day and night. What he struggled through on a daily basis, both in anti-Semitic Europe, Germany, and then anti-Semitic America, coming to America, in running becoming president, chairman, and CEO of an oil and gas drilling company and a commercial bank, two of the most traditionally anti-Semitic businesses in America. And so, yeah, we became overachievers. He wanted us. He knew education was important. That not everybody could be like him, and just do it through hard work and determination. So he did everything possible to make sure that all three of us went to Ivy League schools, and all three of us went to Ivy League schools. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, we definitely inherited that drive to accomplish things. We also developed I think there's 6 senses, a 7th sense. That sense being, or enhanced senses to the downtrodden, the underdog, people who are suffering, people who are in pain, and we react to it we're more sensitive to it, and it affects us more emotionally because we've been brought up in a family since childhood, is hearing about pain and suffering and death. So we identify with those that are going through that, even though we personally didn't go through it. We have in our hearts to do something. So whether it was my music under Sir Ivan, where I took all the iconic anti-war songs and peace songs from the Woodstock era and brought them to life for a new generation. It's called electronic dance music. I started off with John Lennon's Imagine, and songs of that type, where lyrics meant something, where civil rights, gay rights, women's rights, environmental rights, it all happened in the 60s and early 70s. It's the one time the whole planet became enlightened and all agreed that things need to change, and all those changes were for the better. But those are fights that are all still being waged today, and both still in America and the rest of the world. So that battle I fight through my music under Sir Ivan, and through my Peaceman Foundation, which helps people with PTSD and looks for cures and treatments for PTSD. Because any type of trauma, whether it was, in my father's case, Auschwitz, even though they didn't have a medical diagnosis even called PTSD at that point in time, he still had nightmares, he still had flashbacks. I'm sure he still was occasionally depressed, even though he may not have shown it, because he was a tiger and always showing strength for the family and for the business and for the shareholders and the stockholders. We knew that he had a mild case. Fortunately, he was able to overcome it and become one of the most successful businessmen in American history. But the vast majority can't overcome it, or they can only overcome it partially. And it's for those that I fight on a daily basis to help ease their pain and suffering.
You know, when we talk about senses, empathy is not thought of as one of the traditional senses that we taste, smell, touch, those sorts of things. But the ability to develop an empathetic worldview, I think, is one of the things that you're speaking to, Ivan, that I think is just fascinating. Because David and I wrote this book over my shoulder here, Compassionate Capitalism. And it's impossible for me to feel compassion about anything unless I feel connected to it. And connection and empathy go hand in hand, not sympathy, but empathy. I mean, I can imagine being in your place, and that compels action. That actually compels a different kind of action to take place. So I'm curious. I mean, your dad, Siggy, made sure that you and your siblings got to an Ivy League school, and you went to an Ivy League school. That sort of thing. So you didn't have the same kind of suffering that he did. And I say suffering in the broadest possible sense of that, with what he actually dealt with. But somewhere you got that empathetic genetic lever. How did you develop that, given that you had other things that most people would look at and go, boy, yeah, he or she, your sister, you got the world by the tail right now. I mean, look at what you're doing. So where did that come from for you specifically, such that you've dedicated your life to this?
Well, I told you, when you hear the suffering from early childhood, it becomes ingrained in you.
Yeah. Okay. Part of the story.
Most children or teenagers in America didn't go through what he went through.
Right.
It was so abnormal. It was so cruel. It was so inhuman. So it's you hear about the nightmares so often. It becomes part of your DNA. Got it. And we were. There's no question that, having lost 59 relatives in the Holocaust, that my father saw all three children as partial replacements for the family that had been decimated, and expected us all to bring to marry Jewish, stay in the faith, continue the tradition, have Jewish children so that he could have Jewish grandchildren, et cetera, to help replenish the millions that were murdered. So when you have that obligation, it's thrust upon you. You can't escape it even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the 3D printing and manifestation, but it's manifested itself into an incredible biography, a modern day David and Goliath journey of your father called Unstoppable. And I don't know if you know this, but I am the chairman of a foundation called the Unstoppable Foundation, and Blaine and Cynthia, his wife, founded it, and Blaine sits on the board with me as well, which is very important to us. But the term unstoppable means so much because I believe in the enjoyment of the consistent, everyday, persistent, without quit pursuit of your own potential. And, your father, Siggy Wilzig, I think exemplifies that pursuit. What's the biggest lesson that you want people to take away from the biography that you've written about your father called Unstoppable?
Well, I contributed to the writing. Joshua M. Green is the author, but over 100 people were interviewed, so it's a quite accurate picture of what he was like, his personality. You'll feel like you knew him well. You'll know his sense of humor, which was very much like Jackie Mason.
We're old enough to know who that is, so that's good.
Right,
It's such a rare combination of business genius and it's such an absurd, crazy sense of humor that it helped charm people socially and in getting customers. He was the super salesman. It didn't matter what he was selling in his life. He doubled the sales. He tripled the sales. He quadrupled the sales. Everything he touched turned to gold because he just had skills. He had the knack. He knew people. After when you're in a concentration camp and you have to make split-second decisions, sometimes you don't get the choice, of course, with Nazi guards there or cruel capos. But when you have to make a decision to volunteer or not volunteer for something, it meant having a sense, like a fox-like sense of when one choice might have meant him staying alive another day, and making the wrong choice would have meant he was going to be murdered that day. So he knew people, and that helped him. That helped him in business, and that helped him sense whether somebody was actually an honest. You could tell if somebody was an honest person telling the truth, or whether somebody was a BS artist. And that helps when you're making a loan to somebody, which he did. So yeah, he was unstoppable in so many senses of the word. His entire life, whether it was for surviving the Nazis, overcoming the anti-Semitic board of directors in America and the two companies he took over, and fighting the just cause, fighting against Holocaust deniers, fighting for the state of Israel. It was just not just a super father, he was a Superman.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it. Obviously, with
same.
My culture, religion, and history, books like this fascinate me. Any David and Goliath story, especially, is one that resonates with me, not just because of my name, but because of my heritage and my genetic and energetic inheritance that I received. You feel like Mishbuko to me right off the bat. So I appreciate you coming on Office Hours. And everyone go out. We have the websites below. Check out sirivan.com, but find the biography at unstoppablesiggy.com. Thanks so much. We appreciate you, Ivan.
Ivan, thank you.
Great to be here.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow.
Great show today. Whoa.
Yeah, as always, man. Well, all right. This is a tough one. Takeaway for the day.
Takeaways. There was something that I was struck with that Andrea had said. I'm an artist. And, if we go back, with our first guest, Nadav, what he was talking about with 3D printing was artistry. Yeah. And the idea, the ability to take something that doesn't exist in terms of my ability to see it, touch it, smell it, in in this time space and manifest it. That's what artists do. That's what entrepreneurs do. That's what Ivan was talking about as well. You know, his dad's ability to actually manifest a different life. So this idea of artistry, you know, taking something from nothing and actually making it something. That's the one thing that we all, I think, have access to. We all have access to nothing, which is an interesting way to think about it. We all have access to nothing. What we do with that no thing makes all the difference in the world, because we can manifest anything from nothing.
I love that. It's like we go from nowhere to now here to nowhere, and there's all no thing involved. You know, there's 99% of everything is just space, empty space of nothingness, and it's the 1% of what we have to materialize. My takeaway is in human nature. And I think, you know, I'm really stressing open mind versus closed mind. And, you know, obviously with 3D printing, you have this open-mindedness. I, you know, went back to that story of Justice Scalia, who, by the way, I love the fact when I saw him later on in my life, he said to me, I told him the story. Obviously, he didn't remember me. I told him the story, and then he remembered me. And he said, David, you don't tell anyone that story, do you? I said, oh, every chance I get. He had a great sense of humor, as you know, you could tell in his relationship with Ruth Bader Ginsburg as well. Oh yeah,
she thought he was wonderful.
What an open mind he really had. He, you know, sometimes we are not open-minded about everything because we don't know what we don't know, and some things seem so unreal that we can't have an open mind. And I think that's what I want people to do, is just when you think that it's impossible, like a Jeff Bezos 25 years ago telling me, you know, selling his books out of a garage, I'm going to be the richest man on earth, a trillionaire someday. It surpassed my imagination, right? That would surpass. And so I think, you know, keeping our mind open in human nature is to limit ourselves. The 3D printing limits ourselves. Entrepreneurs limit themselves. And of course, those that have suffered worse than anyone, and I think the Holocaust is, you know, at one of the pinnacles of history of suffering for mass amount of people, that an open mind, an open heart, and open hands will manifest that nothingness, right? Yeah. So I appreciate you. Also, today's Julie's birthday. So
Julie's birthday today. Yes.
Yeah, give her a big shout out. I know she's not awake yet, and thank goodness she's not, because she would not like me if she is. But I just want to give a big shout out how blessed I am to have my anniversary 2 days ago, 24 years with the most incredible woman in the world, perfect for me. And I want to wish my wife a happy birthday.
Julie is, I love her. Absolutely love her. And you too.
My greatest manifestation. All right. Okay. Took me many years to get her to love me, but that's okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Thank you, Blaine. I appreciate you, my friend.
You bet,
I love this.
Have a great birthday day.
We will. It's going to be great. Okay. Thanks for going early. You made it a better birthday.
Bet. Absolutely. Enjoy the day.
We will. Take care. All right, everyone. What a show. That's all I got to say. Check out learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM, the Mindset Mastermind. That's my mentor. People ask me, where do you learn all this shit, Blaine? So thank you, Blaine, Bob Proctor, Mary Morrissey, and many others for allowing me to transcode your hyper complex ideas into some sort of new 3D printing, a lower level of articulation of what we can manifest, and we can manifest whatever we desire rapidly and accurately. If you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be at the right way at the perfect time, utilize the law of Goya, as you saw with Ivan, meaning get off your ass, make it happen, and allow, with the law of attraction allowance, what already exists in that nothingness to come to fruition. I want to thank everybody. We got training tomorrow. I'm going to teach the 7 Faces of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of my mentors. We're going to talk about the power of intention and the faces of intention, of how to pay attention and give intention to the coincidences you want. That's the 3D printer mechanism that we utilize to materialize rapidly and accurately exactly what we want But most importantly, everyone, be kind to your future self and do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow.